You say I'm fine even when there's a storm raging inside you. You smile even when your throat tightens. You keep going even though a part of you is slowly fading away. Are your suppressed feelings secretly harming you? Maybe you haven't noticed, but every denied emotion, every time you say it's nothing, every tear you hold back, leaves a trace on your soul. Brain psychologically speaking, repressed emotions don't disappear. They get stored in your body, in your memory, in your behaviors. They come back in other forms. A headache with no clear cause. An anxiety you can't quite name. A sudden burst of anger over something trivial, that's actually the last drop in a cup long overflowing. Pushpin, you're not too sensitive. You're just exhausted from holding everything inside for far too long. Fire. In this video, we'll explore 1. The subtle signs that repressed feelings are quietly destroying you every day. Ever felt tired even when you haven't done anything exhausting? Not the physical kind of tired, but a soul-level fatigue, like you've been bracing against something invisible day after day. Round pushpin, this isn't laziness or lack of motivation. It's the burnout of a soul that's been silent for too long. Pushpin sign number 1, you've emotionally shut down without realizing it. You don't really feel anything anymore. Not joy. Not sadness. Just existing. Someone shares something emotional, you nod, but you don't feel it. You look at your life and can't remember the last time something felt truly real. Brain, this is called emotional numbing, the mind's way of protecting itself when emotions have been bottled up too long. Pushpin sign number 2, you overreact to small things. A mild comment. Someone not texting back. Plans falling through, and suddenly, you're disproportionately upset. Collision, you're not too dramatic. You're just carrying unprocessed emotions. And that tiny trigger? It's simply the drop that overflowed a cup that's been full for a long time. Your anger isn't about now, it's about everything you haven't had the space to express before. Pushpin sign number 3, you avoid rather than feel. You'll do anything, to avoid sitting with your real feelings. Always playing music, podcasts, videos, just to avoid silence. Always keeping busy, afraid that if you stop, you'll fall apart. Always saying I'm fine, because the truth? You wouldn't even know where to begin. Broken heart, but the very thing you avoid is silently hurting you the most. Pushpin sign number 4, your body starts speaking for you. Repressed feelings don't just live in your mind, they show up in your body too. Chronic headaches. Tight chest, shallow breath, insomnia. That restless, anxious feeling in your chest that never really goes away. DNA, your body isn't betraying you. It's speaking for you, saying what you've kept silent for too long. Direct hit, the truth is, suppressing emotions doesn't make you stronger, it only makes you live as a smaller version of yourself. And the most dangerous part? You get so used to the emptiness, you start to believe it's normal. If you see yourself in these signs, don't panic. You're not broken. You're just carrying too many untold stories, too many feelings left unheard. And that is exactly what we'll uncover next. 2. Why we learn to suppress emotions and the psychological price we pay. No one is born knowing how to hide their emotions. We learn that bit by bit. From each experience, each wound, each cold stare. Magnifying glass tilted left. Why do we start suppressing emotions? Round pushpin 1. Because we were taught emotions equals weakness. You cried, someone said, stop being a baby. You got angry, they called you disrespectful. You felt anxious, they mocked you for overthinking. So you learned. Backhand index pointing right, emotions equals problems. Backhand index pointing right, better stay quiet. Better swallow it down. Round pushpin 2. Because we weren't truly listened to. Maybe you did try to open up, but they turned away. Or worse, they used what you shared against you later. So you told yourself, no one really gets me. Sharing just makes it worse. Broken heart, and you put on the I'm fine mask, not because you were fine, but because you were afraid of being hurt again. Round pushpin 3. Because you had to grow up too soon. If you grew up in chaos, constant fighting, cold silence, emotional neglect, you had to be the good kid. Self-reliant. Invisible. You learned to put your feelings aside to keep the peace. You learned to be the adult before you were ready. And you became so good at it, you forgot you're allowed to be soft, too. Brain, so what's the psychological cost of all this? You disconnect from yourself. You don't know what you really want. What you truly feel. Sometimes, you're not even sure who you are anymore. You end up in unhealthy relationships. Because when you don't understand your emotions, you can't set boundaries. You don't know when to leave. Or when you're being hurt. You feel lonely even in a room full of people. Because if no one knows how you really feel, how can they really connect with you? Direct hit, the truth is, suppressing emotions doesn't erase pain, it just relocates it. From your heart to your mind to your body to your actions, and finally, it damages the very life you're trying to protect. Sparkles, but here's one thing you must remember. You weren't wrong for going silent to survive. You just need to be reminded that now, it's safe to learn how to feel again. One step at a time. 3. How to begin releasing suppressed emotions. There's no magic switch that suddenly turns your feelings back on. Healing doesn't come from forcing yourself to think positive. It comes from allowing yourself to feel even when it's uncomfortable. Seedlings start small, but real. Acknowledge. You don't need to shout in the streets, I'm hurting. Just be honest with yourself. There's something in me that feels tired. There's an emotion I've buried for too long. Brain, because only when you acknowledge it will your brain allow you to touch the feeling instead of endlessly turning away from it. Writing hand 2. Write it down so your emotions have a way out. You don't have to be a writer. All you need is a piece of paper and to ask yourself, what am I feeling today? When was the last time I felt hurt, and what happened? Is there an emotion I've never had the courage to say out loud? Backhand index pointing right writing isn't about fixing it right away. It's about learning to communicate with yourself again. Speech balloon 3. Practice honesty with someone safe. Not everyone deserves to hear your story. But there is always someone who will listen if you're brave enough to open up. A trusted friend. A therapist. Or sometimes, just a simple, honest message. Hey, I haven't been okay lately. Would you be willing to listen? Direct hit, what you need isn't someone to fix you. You need someone to truly be there when you start being real. Milky Way 4. Listen to your body, where emotions live the longest. Suppressed emotions don't vanish, they get stored in the body. You might feel tension in your muscles for no clear reason. Headaches. Insomnia. A racing heart even when nothing's wrong. Backhand index pointing right, try this. Deep breathing for 3 minutes a day. Gentle yoga, or just walking without your phone. Place your hand over your heart and whisper, I'm here. I'm listening. Light bulb, your body doesn't lie. When you listen to it, you're listening to you. Repeat button 5. Let emotions move through instead of staying stuck. Emotions are energy in motion. If you don't resist, they will pass. Next time you want to cry, don't hold it in. When you feel sad, don't cover it up with a forced laugh. When you feel hurt, don't bury it under a quick "I'm fine." Backhand index pointing right, let your feelings flow, so you can truly live. Sparkling heart, and finally, remind yourself every single day. Your emotions are valid. You're not too sensitive. You're not weak. You're simply a human being, finding your way back to your own heart. And that journey, even if it's slow, even if it's messy, sparkles, is so worth continuing. Maybe you don't cry. You don't scream. You don't fall apart. But deep inside, there are wounds that were never named. Sorrows you've hidden so well, even you barely recognize them anymore. And still, you keep living, smiling, working, fitting in. As if everything's fine. But you know what? Herb emotions don't disappear just because you ignore them. They lie quietly, in your sleepless nights. In your unexplained frustration. In that fatigue no one seems to understand. And they're just waiting for you to pause for a moment and listen. Candle, you don't have to be okay all the time. You don't have to suppress in order to be loved. You don't have to keep it together to be worthy. You deserve a kind of love that doesn't ask you to hide your tears. You deserve someone who gently asks, "How are you really feeling today?" And if no one's asked you that yet, let me be the first. Are you okay? Love letter. If this video touched something in you, leave a message for yourself or for someone who might need it. Or share it, because sometimes one sentence at the right time can save a soul that's about to give up. Thank you for being here. You're not alone. You're just on the journey back to yourself. And that is a journey so worthy of being walked. Sparkling heart.